Oldboy is one of the best revenge movies ever made. Spike Lee's 2013 Oldboy, however, is a monumentally cancerous embarrassment. Apparently there's plenty of people who think that this remake is actually not that bad, and it leaves me to wonder what they even got out of the original. Apparently to some people, the entire experience of watching a film is nothing more than a summary of basic plot points, because aside from that, everything about the original that made it special was either butchered or stripped away, which kind of defeats the point of remaking something. If every choice that made the original work was not important enough for you to include in the remake, then what about the original did you want to share to a new audience? What movie did you even watch?
Most times when there's a great film, certainly international films, it's remade in America, people are terrified of what's going to happen. The fact that it's
I've
you...
heard that.
Yeah.
I've heard that.
Yeah, the fact that
on my
it's you,
Twitter.
You might have a moment. You'll have a bit of a grace period. But are you going to stay true to the original text?
It's a reinterpretation.
Because the ending, we can't, but it's so... Can you do... Right?
It's a reinterpretation.
Oldboy 2013 started with a script from Mark Protosevich, a script that was passed around for years to many different potential actors and directors. I shit you not, there was even a point where it seemed like it would be directed by Steven Spielberg and starring Will Smith. Now that would be a good movie.
Oh, that's hot. That's hot.
Now, it's unclear whether or not this writer created this as some sort of passion project as a fan of the original film, but the end product just makes it seem like it was a total cash grab. Like, hey, we got the rights to this previously successful intellectual property. Perhaps people will watch this for the title alone. Eventually, the project made its way to Spike Lee, and it's incredibly unclear whether or not he was even passionate about the original movie at all. Now, when I decided to make this review, I kinda fucking hated Spike Lee. Partly because of some shitty things that he's done, but mostly because the movies I saw from him were absolute garbage. So I challenged my perspective and decided to watch some of his supposedly great films. And at this point, I don't really hate him. He's clearly got some talent, even if he's made more bad movies than good movies. And I'm glad I bothered to look past the surface here, because what became incredibly apparent was that Oldboy 2013 was a movie that he was either not proud of or not interested in making. Perhaps this film was made with the Taika Waititi approach of one for them, one for me. They're paying me money to make this movie, so I guess why not? Fuck it. Who knows, maybe I'm wrong and Spike Lee just genuinely loved this script. But when you compare the interviews he gives for something like BlacKkKlansman, which is undeniably a passion project of his, he just seems so eager and excited to talk about it. He's got a lot to say and he clearly wants to share it with the world. But then you look at the interviews he gave for Oldboy 2013, and it feels as though he's not even awake. The way he talks about this movie feels as though he's being forced to talk about it.
I'm getting ready to do a new film. It's called I'm not gonna say a remake, I'm gonna say it's a reinterpretation of this classic Korean film called Oldboy.
Which is one of the finest films ever made.
Yes, it's true. Starring Josh Brolin, Sharpo Copley from District 9, Elizabeth Olsen, and Samuel L. Jackson.
Of all the films I've done, you know, for me it's about telling a good story. And there's many different stories you can tell. Oldboy is gonna be another one.
Yes, Spike, I can really tell how passionate you are about this project. Oh well. Now I want to make it absolutely clear that I don't believe every remake should be a carbon copy of the original. There are many remakes out there that wound up improving the film from their own choices. But it really bugs me when the changes being made are so consistently for the worse. It always seems like a complete misunderstanding of the original's purpose. It's one thing to make changes to a film, but it's another to completely miss the point of what you're changing. So let's just go through the film so I can thoroughly explain why each choice made for this movie just plain didn't work.
You reinterpreted Oldboy. It obviously comes along a lot of fans of the original one. So what would you want to tell them off the bat, you know, maybe one sentence to kind of put their minds at ease about this version?
Come with an open mind.
Alright, so in case you hadn't guessed, I'm gonna be spoiling the shit out of both of these movies, so if you haven't seen the original 2003 South Korean Oldboy, then check that out right now. I would suggest watching it with subtitles instead of the dub. Right away from the very beginning of the film, the differences between the two are staggering. The original film opens up right into the action. It's exciting, the music is exhilarating and intense. Who the hell is this guy and why is he dangling this other guy with a dog over the edge of a fucking building? To put it quite simply, it grabs your fucking attention.
대수.
Holy fuck, that was a great transition. I'm excited to learn about everything. Within an instant, the film is shifted into a comedy showcasing a fat, clumsy, drunk fool. What circumstances transformed this into this? Pretty intriguing, if I do say so myself. Over the next few minutes, we're given so much useful information about the characters in the film, and it's presented in a way where it doesn't feel like a huge exposition dump. We learn that he has a daughter and that it's her birthday, and from that we can infer that this isn't just some one-time oops I got so drunk incident that landed him at the police station. The fact that he's in this situation on his daughter's birthday implies that he's an alcoholic. The fact that he got her a present shows that he obviously loves her, but the situation in of itself shows that he's kind of an irresponsible asshole.
내 이름이 왜 오대수냐면은 오늘만 대충 수습하면서 살자 이래서 오대수거든. 근데 왜 이렇게 오늘은 수습이 안 되냐? 보내줘!
Hey, what do you know? Even his name holds significance towards the sequence of events in the film. It's also interesting to note that this film starts with the main character in captivity. Not only is it clever foreshadowing towards the captivity that he ultimately winds up in, but seeing how he reacts to this taste of what's to come really emphasizes his struggle later in the film. I also love how his sharing of personal information makes so much sense because he's shit-faced. There's plenty of people that wind up oversharing when they're drunk, so it makes tons of sense. We're introduced to this character who picks him up from the police station, and we can obviously infer that he's such a great friend in his life that he would do that. The first thing he does once he's released is phone his daughter, telling her that he has a present for her and insisting that she waits just a bit longer for him to get home. His friend even insists on talking to his daughter on the phone to wish her a happy birthday. The film doesn't even show all that much, but it's incredibly clear how close their relationship is. As his friend is on the phone, our main character disappears into thin air, and this sets up the sequence of events for the whole film. So, after 5 minutes of exhilarating, entertaining, and purposeful filmmaking, we've made it to the opening credits, where it's clear from these stylized choices here that time plays a very important role in the film. Now, I'd say that was a pretty fucking great intro to a film, don't you think? Let's see what Oldboy 2013 has in store for us. So the movie starts out and it's straight into the opening title sequence. It's stale and uninspired visually, and the ominous music we're treated to is indistinguishable from any other Hollywood schlock movie. I can understand if you wanted to change the personality of the film, but right away, it's clear that this film has no personality. Why make art when you can just check items off a list of what is required to make it technically a movie? As soon as the opening titles end, we meet our main character, Joe Doucette. Joe, the most uninspired name of all time. We learn that he's an advertising executive and also that he's an alcoholic, but instead of showing it in any kind of fun or interesting way, it kind of just slaps us over the head with it. Oh no, he's getting drunk on his lunch break. Just look at that bottle of alcohol. Oh no, he's such an alcoholic. Oh no, look how drunk he's acting towards his secretary. He's such an asshole. Now, the original movie wasn't exactly subtle in how they showed him being drunk. The subtlety is found in how that information relates to the actual story. From an audience member's perspective, this scene could very well be for the sake of entertainment only, and although we do get essential information in this scene, it in no way feels like an exposition dump. In Oldboy 2013, the scene serves literally no other purpose than to dump that information. Okay, item 1 on the checklist, we gotta show that he's an alcoholic. Let's show him pouring liquor into his soda cup. It has changed from something you can learn about the character into something that the film is insisting about the character. We then learn that it is October 8th, 1993, 3:12 p.m. And within less than a minute, we get this conversation.
What can I do for you, Donna?
Do you know what day this is?
Yes, I do. It's the 8th of October, the year of our Lord, 1993, which means that I'm late with my child support again.
That is not why I'm calling you, and you know it.
You know, usually when you break immersion and put a title on the screen, the whole point is to deliver information to the audience that they otherwise wouldn't have gotten. Why would you put that there if you're just gonna say it anyway? I mean, him saying it out loud wasn't exactly subtle in the first place, and unlike the original film, you can't really just chalk this one up to him oversharing a bunch of personal information because he's drunk. Who exactly benefits from this title if you're just going to say it out loud less than a minute later? Why?
I asked you to come to Mia's party 3 weeks ago and you never called me back.
Well, I can't make it, Donna.
Why not?
Because I have a big client dinner, Donna.
Huh. Well, that's way more important than your daughter's birthday.
Okay, listen to me. She is 3 years old, okay? 3 years old. Okay, you think she cares whether I'm there or not?
Okay, so I guess in this reinterpretation, he just doesn't even give a shit about his daughter at all. Not sure exactly how that benefits the experience of the film, but okay. Man, look at how fat and out of shape I am. Check out these man titties. So if you haven't guessed what they're doing here, they're really obviously trying to ham up the whole physical transformation thing. You know, because in the original Oldboy, the character's a fat, clumsy oaf, and then he trains a bunch, and all of a sudden he can kick some serious ass. The transformation this actor and character went through is actually quite impressive. So obviously they're going to try to do the same thing here and really oversell it.
Josh Brolin telling Terry Oldboy was his toughest role ever, not just getting into that headspace, but because of his extreme physical transformation.
Just the weight you lost, the weight you put on, that must have been so demanding on your body.
I was actually just dumb because we gained 28 pounds in 10 days because of salt intake, which was not good. I mean, really not good. Like, it hurt. And then we had to lose 22 pounds in 2.5 days.
So it literally hurt to be that bloated?
Literally hurt. We were doing water weight, so we were figuring out ways just to hold the water as much as possible. So I was just like one big roly-poly bloat.
Once again, this is no longer something you can learn through experiencing the film. It is instead something that the film is insisting that you pay attention to. Embarrassingly enough, despite how insistent this film is about it, you can barely fucking notice. He looks the same.
44-year-old guy trying to be 25, you know? It's stupid.
This is the equivalency of one of those shitty diet infomercials where the person is clearly extending their stomach in the before shot. Wow, look at how much weight I lost. Can't you tell? Aren't you impressed? Please clap. So now he's at that big client dinner, and it turns out rather successfully. I should mention that the runtime of the film is now past what we've gone through for the original, meaning this remake managed to take longer to show us less information in a less entertaining way. Oh hey, look, there's a creepy Asian lady staring at me from over there. I wonder what that could be about. Oh hey, have you forgotten about how much of an asshole our main character is? Let's tell you some more.
What do you say? You and I, we get together this weekend, ditch the old man, bottle of scotch, 8 ball of coke, dirty movies on Skinamax.
Excuse me?
Oh shit, he's totally hitting on the partner of the person that he just did business with. What a dick.
You're a dick.
You want to disrespect me?
No, I don't.
That's all right. It's all right.
It's just a
I'm a
misunderstanding.
big boy.
He's a big boy.
I'm a big boy. I'm a big boy. I can take it.
Okay.
But you disrespect the woman I love, son. Well, that's just plain stupid.
It's just a misunderstanding.
Daniel Newcomb used double slap. Woo, lordy, look at how drunk I am now.
I'm drunk!
So now he wanders into Chinatown and he finds some random lady selling some shit. Hey, look, it's a reference to the original movie to remind us how shitty this one is. So he spends $5 on a random piece of shit for his daughter's birthday, which probably only happened because his ex-wife yelled at him. Then we meet this film's version of his friend. And the way this film presents it, it's as though he's just some random bar owner who only knows the main character because of how much of an alcoholic he is.
Come on! Let me know one drink. Come on, one. Coffee. No, fuck coffee.
No, you promised.
No, you promised.
You promised.
promised.
Come on.
Tell the duck.
I don't want to tell the duck,
Come on.
okay? Come back
No,
tomorrow.
no, fuck no. Ah!
Uh-oh, it's the spooky Asian lady from before. Oh no. Not sure how it benefits the viewer's experience to just show who's under the umbrella like that. Thanks. So now I guess his friend changes his mind or just wants to go check up on him, and uh-oh. The film's music is very heavily insisting that this is serious, but this is just too goddamn ridiculous. And yep, we're over 10 minutes through the film now, meaning that this is essentially double the amount of time that the original took to get to this point, and we got so much less from the experience. Great reinterpretation, guys. Alright, let's get back to the original movie. As soon as the opening credits end, we are treated to yet another incredibly powerful scene.
아저씨, 잠깐 일로 와봐. 자, 얘기 좀 해, 나랑. 어? 아저씨, 나 여기서 내보내달라고 안 할 테니까, 어? 나 여기 왜 뭐 때문에 들어왔는지 그것만 얘기 좀 해줘요, 예? 아니, 사람이 알고야 같이 있어야지.
I really love the choice to open up this sequence with this shot. Not only do we see a powerhouse of emotions from our main actor, but the information we're given as audience members is so limited, which helps us empathize with the panic and fear of the main character. It's clear that he doesn't know why he was kidnapped and imprisoned in this room, he doesn't know where he is, and we don't even know what the room looks like. All we see is a raw display of ranging emotion, desperation, fear, anger.
아저씨, 잠깐만 이리 와봐. 아저씨, 잠깐만요. 여기 뭐 하는 데야? 어? 아저씨, 나 언제까지 있어야 되는데? 나 그것만 좀 가르쳐줘. 어? 아저씨, 야, 씨발.
It's just such an intelligent way to open up a scene, and it really shows the thought and care put into how information is revealed in this film. Just how long and how desperately was this character waiting for this door to open? The 2 months that he's already been imprisoned is clearly driving him to act desperately.
개새끼야. 너 씨발놈아 얼굴 봤어 너. 너 나가면 죽어 이 개새끼. 이거. 씨발. 미안해. 욕 안 할게. 나 그만 가르쳐줘. 한 달 아니면 2달이야. 한 3달.
On top of that, it just feels so incredibly real. The way that Choi Min-sik is trying to force his body through the opening, the way that this faceless actor is kicking him back inside. This is one of those movies where it's clear that everyone on set is giving it their all. We then see the interior of the room where he is now wailing on the door, and then we get some voiceover narration to accompany the scene.
그때 그들이 15년이라고 말해줬다면 조금이라도 견디기가 쉬워졌을까?
There's plenty of movies out there where voiceover narration feels cheesy or unnecessary, but it really helps the film here, especially considering the main character has essentially lost his mind at this point. Either way, getting our information this way is a hell of a lot less cheesy than if he were just talking to himself out loud. Plus, the narration serves more towards developing the character than it does just explaining things to the audience.
난 당신이 텔레비전과 친해지길 권하고 싶다. 텔레비전은 시계이자 달력이고 학교고 집이고 교회며 친구이자 애인이다.
When we learn that his wife has been murdered, there is no voiceover narration because it's something that we can already figure out from what we're seeing. Our main character is driven to the point of insanity, he starts hallucinating ants crawling all over his body. The emotional toll that this experience is inflicting upon this character is just so perfectly communicated. He even tries killing himself, but they won't even let him have that. After 3 years, we see from his performance how difficult it is for him to stomach eating the same food he's been given every day. Eventually, he starts writing a prison journal and tries to figure out exactly which person he's wronged in his life would do this to him. One day he realizes he gets an extra chopstick with his meal. By this point, our character is so focused on revenge that he dedicates his time to physical training. At 6 years in, he starts to tattoo one line in his hand for every year he's been imprisoned. As the years pass, we can see the scars grow on his knuckles from punching the wall. As he makes progress with his escape plan, we see television clips showcasing major events that have taken place while he's in captivity, which is a clever way of showing passage of time considering he is experiencing all of these events through his television set alone. After 15 years, he gets his first taste of the outside world and he predicts that he'll be out within a month's time. But this time when he is knocked out from the sleeping gas, a woman comes in the room to hypnotize him.
당신은 고개를 돌려서 아래를 내려다봅니다. 푸른 잔디가 끝없이 펼쳐진 들판입니다. 찬란한 햇빛이 비추고 산들바람이 붑니다.
What a great scene transition. Anyway, now it appears as though he's out of that room, so let's see what Oldboy 2013 did with this whole scene. Rather than showing us a powerful scene 2 months into the main character's captivity, we are instead shown Joe Doucette waking up in the room for the first time. At first he thinks this is just a regular motel room that he probably had a one-night stand in. He peeks behind the curtain of the running shower, but oh, spooky, no one's there. He then starts talking out loud to himself, saying things like, "Where the fuck is the phone?" Eventually he realizes that this is no regular motel room and that he cannot escape. And now they decide to recreate the shot that the original film started the scene with.
Hey, tell me what I mean. No, listen. Tell me what I mean. No.
Yep, that's it. No desperation, no range of emotions. He barely even fucking tries.
What Josh does is a tour de force. He has to play someone who's locked away for a long time.
There's an intensity that he's bringing to this part that is just wonderful.
That's the thing, is what kind of research do you do? Because you see him in every aspect of every type of behavior. Angry, rage, sad, lonely, alone.
Tell me what I mean. No, listen. Tell me what I mean. No.
That's what Spike does. He creates an ambience where anything goes.
He sits down to eat his food and immediately spits it out because apparently it's just really disgusting. It's like they missed the point of the main character growing to hate the food because it's the same thing every day. It doesn't even seem like any time has passed at all, and already Joe Doucette just hates it. I guess he just doesn't like Chinese food. Shortly after, we see that he's actually given quite the variety of foods.
Dumplings. Anything but dumplings.
Please. Please, can I have something else to eat? Jesus H. Christ, God love you, give me something other than this crap.
Why are you saying this when they're giving you many things other than dumplings? You got Frosted Flakes, you got cup of noodles, you got a burrito. Even the dumplings come with a healthy portion of rice. If you're not going to include the fact that the main character was given nothing but dumplings to eat, then what's the point of showing him being sick of dumplings at all? It's like they completely missed the whole point. Like, great, he's a picky eater, I guess. How exactly does that add anything to the movie? We then get a recreation of the masturbation scene from the original. In the 2003 film, several years have passed and the main character's only companion is the television. He is so desperate for human affection that he resorts to masturbating to women on television who aren't even really doing anything all that sexual. This is a scene to emphasize the desperation of the character, and once again, this remake completely misses the fucking point. Not only is what Joe Doucette masturbates to essentially just almost porn in the first place, but there's zero semblance of any kind of desperation in him doing this.
Here we go. In.
Squeeze.
And release. Let's go. Keep going. Squeeze. And up. Ah.
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 Rather than seeing the toll that isolation has played on the character, instead all we can see is that he's a creepy pervert. The main character of the original was clearly not fucking proud of himself for doing this, but Joe Doucette is just so into it and enjoying himself that it feels as though this is probably the same routine he has at home. Why are you showing it if the whole point of showing it isn't there? Why? So Joe gets knocked out from the sleepy time gas, and then we see people collecting his hair and blood and fingerprints. The first film left some room for interpretation as to what they were doing, and you eventually learn what they were doing through information presented later, but once again, Oldboy 2013 removes any sense of thought or subtlety from the viewer's experience. If it wasn't already obvious enough that they're getting his fingerprints on a crowbar, the bags and containers that they are using to collect all of this are labeled evidence, just in case you didn't get it. So now he learns that his wife got murdered on television. In the original film, the news coverage states that the main character had been missing a year before that point, but in this movie they fail to communicate any kind of passage of time at all. It's so poorly presented that who knows, maybe it's been a year, maybe it's been a week.
The victim was the mother of a 3-year-old girl
who was inside the apartment at the time of the killing.
To quote forensic investigators, the evidence
is irrefutable.
I'm sorry, how do you have all of this information as the daughter is being carried out of the building? That's gotta be the quickest investigation of all time. So now instead of hallucinating ants, Joe Doucette just hallucinates a creepy man. And since there's no communication towards passage of time in this film, we don't really know why he's hallucinating. Based on how it's presented, it's most likely that he was just really drunk.
Spike has his own ideas of, okay, let's turn this music on and I'll put an 11-minute mag on and you just go, and if you're naked, great, and if, you know, maybe we'll put a mouse in the room and then deal with him, and you know what I mean?
There is an absolute failure to communicate the struggle of this character, and it's incredibly frustrating. Eventually, they do attempt to communicate the main character's isolation and loneliness, and it comes off as incredibly comical. Joe Doucette gets so lonely that he uses his own blood to paint himself a Wilson-style Dakimakura? Wow, what a weeb. We then get a sequence where he makes friends with a rat that he finds in his bathroom. The rat has babies, and then the rat disappears, and he's very sad about it. Shortly after, we see him excited to partake in his next meal, and oh no, they killed the rat babies and the rat. Once again, it's incredibly difficult to care about any of this, because who knows, maybe it all happened in one day. His facial hair doesn't change throughout any of these shots. If you really wanted us to feel the loss of his only friend, there's actually a really easy way you could have done that better. Instead of showing all of the rat shots at once, why didn't you just stagger them throughout the whole sequence? You know, then you could have better illustrated just how much of a role this companion played in his life. But nope, he meets the rat and then it's dead really quickly after. Rest in pepperonis, my dear friend.
The makeshift motel was extremely challenging just because it was exposing, physically and emotionally. And that was kind of, not new, but just to that extent I think was new. And then Spike would, you know, put an 11-minute mag in and just, you know, play a certain song over the loudspeaker and then just let me go, which is really unnerving because, you know, you have a crew sitting there going, oh, this is so dumb.
So now Joe Doucette tries to cut himself and it looks really fake and stupid. He wakes up with a haircut and bandage, and then he notices that there's a camera watching him. The implication that the film is making is that he only started to clue into this because he woke up bandaged after his suicide attempt. If they know whenever I try to kill myself, then they must be watching me, right? It makes sense, but it also means that he didn't know there was a camera there when he was jerking off. Why'd you cover your dick with a pillow? Is this what you normally do at home? I guess it was just for the audience of this film? Hilarious. Oh great, thanks for showing us who's watching the camera. It really helps the experience of the film when you strip away elements of mystery. We then see him watching a show called Mysteries of Crime, and they are essentially doing a follow-up on the people affected by the murder he is being framed for. Not sure how this is exactly a mystery of crime when the case was closed within 2 seconds of it occurring. We learned that his daughter was adopted by some very lovely people, and they put her into cello lessons. And he is so moved by watching his daughter play the cello that he decides to stop drinking and be a better person. This is a movie for American audiences. We can't have him motivated by revenge. Let's have him motivated by just how much he loves his daughter. He loves his family so much, and that's what American audiences want.
How do you think this one differs from the one that was created in 2003?
We keep the same plot points to a degree, but the whole movie is made from an American point of view and a point of view of 2013.
We then get a similar but less effective montage of him making progress with his escape, and instead of ending it where he still has another month to go before he'll be free, he actually gets to the point where he can escape. He goes back to the room to grab his pillowcase and the letters he's been writing to his daughter over the years, and just as he's about to leave for good, he gets distracted by the television. His daughter's on TV again, and it's very important that he sees her because he loves her so much. She's all grown up and she's playing the cello so well. I love my daughter so much. Oh, hey, the sleeping gas. Maybe I should get going? Nah. Wouldn't want to catch this program at a later time or anything. Let me inhale a bunch of this sleeping gas first and then maybe try to crawl away. Oh, it's too late. And now with no hypnotism scene at all, he wakes up outside in a rather spacious-looking chest. Yay, we did it. We caught up to the other film. But here's the real kicker. We are now half an hour through this hour and 40-minute long pile of garbage. footage, meaning this entire boring captivity scene was 20 minutes long, whereas the original film communicated everything and so much more in just over 11 minutes. You spent twice as long trying to communicate this man's struggle in captivity, and you fucked up so bad that we barely feel it at all. How embarrassing.
I think it was like really smart that the writer Mark Protasevich, he decided to make it last longer, you know, the scenes when he's in jail. And it was really interesting, you know, to explore all the moments when he's alone and he's like confronted to himself and he's becoming like almost crazy.
Crazy, but a better person.
All right, before we get back to the original movie, I'd like to talk about how shitty this poster is. Seriously, what are we even supposed to interpret from this? He doesn't look like he woke up scared, not knowing where he is. Why does this film feel the need to constantly insist on how cool he is? Also, this looks less like a movie poster and more like a YouTube thumbnail for one of those mailing myself in a box challenges. It just looks pretty awful in general, but there was actually a point where the poster didn't look quite nearly as bad. I mean, check this one out right here. Not only can you clearly tell that this character is escaping here, but the font choice implies a level of chaos and confusion, which not only fits what the film should be going for, but it's admittedly intriguing. This poster was designed by Juan Luis Garcia, a man who was approached by an ad agency representing the film to create several posters. He was told that they could only pay small amounts for creating the posters, but that if the studio and Spike Lee liked them enough, then he would be fairly compensated through the licensing buyout fee. Now, with Juan being a working artist, he obviously saw some red flags, but he was so excited at the prospect of having his own work representing Spike Lee's film that he was a bit blinded by this. From this point, he claims he was taken advantage of, lied to, manipulated, and harassed over the 2-month period that he designed the posters. Eventually, the ad agency contacted him back and said that Spike loved a couple of the posters, but unfortunately, the licensing buyout fee he was promised was insultingly low. He had spent an entire 2 months creating these posters, and the amount that they had offered him was the same that he makes in a day as a photo assistant. Insultingly enough, they insisted that money wasn't important and it was the exposure that counts. Once he refused, they told him that he was a despicable human who would never find work again and threatened to sue him. And on top of all that, they never even paid him the small amount that he was promised for creating the posters. Months later, he decided to publish his posters online as it's something that the agency told him he could do for the exposure anyway, but despite that, he was met with several more threats and harassment. And eventually, these posters were published on Spike Lee's personal and production company's Facebook pages, and it looks like somebody decided to edit in little copyright disclaimers at the bottom of these posters. Copyright 2013 40 Acres and a Mule Filmworks. Copyright 2013 Spike Lee. Oof. After this point, Juan published a letter to Spike Lee detailing the entire experience, and quite understandably, this caused a lot of people to become furious, to which Spike Lee responded on his Twitter, "I never heard of this guy Juan Luis Garcia. If he has a beef, it's not with me. I did not hire him. Do not know him. Cheap trick writing me. Yo!" Very professional. Gotta love how he channeled his inner Jaden Smith and capitalized every single fucking word. Anyway, despite how much they obviously loved the posters he created, instead of paying him, they decided to go the noble route and just rip one of them off. And that is the story of how we got this shitty poster. Totally worth it. So to give a quick summary of what the original film does from here, the main character wakes up. It turns out that he is not in an endless field of grass and that he's actually on a roof somewhere. He finds a depressed man who's about to commit suicide, and we get kind of a bizarre scene. Now, although this may seem a bit comical, it actually says a lot about the character. This is the first human being that he's interacted with in 15 years now. He has been absolutely starved from human interaction for so long, and at this point it seems as though he's trying to make sure he's not dreaming.
내가요. 아무리 짐승만도 못한 놈이어도요. 살 권리 있는 거 아닌가?
It is these words that are the first that he's heard from another human being in 15 years aside from the television, and he is so thankful to hear someone else talk to him that he repeats these words himself. The man falls backwards, but our main character grabs him.
내 얘기를 해주고 싶다. 좀 이따 죽어라.
The film doesn't show him tell his story because we already saw that, so the man's like, wow, that's crazy, now let me tell you why I want to kill myself, and our main character just leaves. It's awesome. As he's leaving, the guy actually kills himself. He finds a bunch of guys hanging out and grabs a cigarette from one of their mouths, and since it's his first cigarette in 15 years, he gets quite the head rush. They kick him over, and then he decides he's going to put his 15 years worth of imaginary training to the test, and it actually works out. Later outside, a man comes up to him and gives him a wallet and phone.
나한테 뭐 물어볼 생각하지 마. 나 하나도 몰라.
He looks inside and there's a bunch of money, so he goes to a restaurant and says that he wants to eat a living thing. He mentions that he recognizes the chef and says that he saw her on a television cooking program. Then his cell phone rings and the ringtone is the exact same song that played every time the sleeping gas filled the room. The man on the phone starts emotionally toying with him as though this is some sort of game.
옷은 마음에 들어요. 나를 왜 가둔 거냐? 죽을 것 같아요.
The conversation ends and then he eats a live octopus, which is pretty intense. And it's important to note that this is not just unnecessary shock value. The context of this character and how focused on revenge he is. He needed to eat something alive because his soul longs to kill. While he's eating, the woman touches his hand and he passes out, and that's the end of the scene. At this point, we're a little over 28 minutes into the film, so let's pick up back where we left off half an hour into the remake. Now, there's actually a lot that they decided to get rid of here. And again, it's fine if you want to make changes like that if you have better ideas for your reinterpretation, but the changes they make are ones that I fail to see as improvements. We don't experience the character showing any emotion over seeing someone for the first time in so long. There's no significance towards the first words that he hears from another human being. Now, I got a much better idea to express how he's been affected by his captivity. Dirt. Hey, look at this. It's a picture of my daughter with a countdown timer. Thank you for reminding us all that he is motivated by his daughter and nothing else. So he looks around and sees the creepy lady with the umbrella watching him and decides he's gonna chase her. And what's a good chase scene without some awesome music to accompany it?
Stop!
Get the fuck off of me.
Hey! Leave the lady alone.
Fucking White Knight over here. Time to beat him up. Now, I know that both films show these guys being super pro martial arts fighters as soon as they get out of captivity, but I feel like it's a lot less believable in this film. Taekwondo literally originated from Korea. It's not unreasonable to assume that the main character was at least exposed to it at some point in his life before captivity. Not only that, but the martial arts training he gives himself is so much more present in the original. In the remake, he punches the wall a couple times, but most of the training we see him do is him just working out. It's a little more difficult to believe that Joe Doucette became a pro fighter from watching yoga. Also, what even was this scene, really? These 5 football guys were just hanging out drinking while their girlfriends were like 20 feet away. I have to assume they came there together because they're drinking the same beer. What's up with all the gender segregation? Also, why was this lady there to fuck with him at all? If these random football guys weren't there, then he would have caught up to you. What would have happened then? Was this a part of your plan? Perhaps she just didn't think this one through? So he gets back to chasing her as she casually walks away. He finds the umbrella, but oh no, it's not her.
Hey, tell me what she is. Tell me where she is. Where is she?
Let him go! Jesus, let go of him!
So now we're introduced to the female lead, who instead of being a chef, she is a nurse that helps out at a mobile clinic in the back of a van. He decides to leave and she offers him her card. Later, Joe winds up at his friend's bar and knocks on the door. He lets him in and Joe decides to tell him his story. Something I forgot to mention is that in this film, he's captive for 20 years instead of 15. It's like they're trying to compensate for how ineffectively they show the character change by just insisting more. Neither him nor his friend look like they've aged 20 years, but whatever, I guess.
I've been locked up for 20 years. 20 years? Yeah. 20 years in the same room? God, I would have gone crazy.
Somebody set me up.
Also, in the original film, he winds up meeting his friend much later, but as I said before, the difference in how they show their relationship is night and day. Here you have a dedicated, lifelong friend who would pick you up from the police station, and here you have the owner of some bar who the main character keeps trying to get alcohol from.
Oh, fuck no! Ah!
What's the point in showing their friendship when you can just insist it instead? Anyway, he gets a phone call from a blocked number with a hilarious image on the screen. And of course, he sounds like the cheesiest Hollywood villain ever.
Hello, Joseph. How's your first day of freedom?
Who is this?
I believe that we are solely responsible for our choices.
One of the things that Spike suggested early on was he wanted to make Adrian British.
Once again, this entire scene is just a watered-down version of the original. Remember all that raw emotion? Well, fuck that shit. Why would you waste your efforts on that when you can just add in some really cheesy music?
If you are successful, Joseph, I think you will find peace. I believe you may even find happiness, perhaps with that lovely daughter of yours, Mia.
Mia has nothing to do with this.
Thank you for reminding me once more that I have a daughter. I better do all this shit because I care about my daughter so much. The call ends and the friend tries to check the number, but it's blocked. So now Joe Doucette's like, please, my bestest friend, I need your help. So they Google a bunch of names of people that Joe Doucette feels he's maybe wronged in his life, once again accompanied by some great music.
Never Say Die Senior Citizen Club. That's him?
Yeah.
Why is he on the list?
Because he was my boss.
The next day, his friend goes to check on him upstairs and he's passed out. He calls 911, but then he notices the information for Elizabeth Olsen's character and hangs up and decides to call her instead. So she shows up and gives him some medical attention, and then his friend leaves to open the bar, and then she starts snooping through his shit.
To love you, Mia. Please give me that chance. The world can be a cold, ugly place, and people can be cruel and deceitful. But never let that change who you are.
Eventually, he wakes up and he gets really pissed off. She apologizes and says that she didn't call the police because she believes him.
What if I thought you knew too much, huh? Reading my letters. What if I felt like I needed to kill you right now?
She buys his shit immediately without question. I don't know, if you're nursing homeless people every day, then you've probably seen a few schizophrenics, right? These letters can't possibly be the delusions of a crazy man who is now threatening me. I guess I'm just gonna help him on his journey. So now they wind up at a retirement home because one of the persons of interest is there. I'm not sure if it was trying to imply that his friend sent him this text or the bad guy, because if it's the bad guy, then he's no longer using a blocked number and maybe you should get your friend to look into that. And if it's your friend, then why is he badgering you with this in all caps while you're supposed to be resting? Isn't he just downstairs doing bar service right now? Whatever, now they're at a retirement home because this is where his old boss is right now. Oh no, he's a crazy man now.
Sorry, boss.
How do you know that's not him?
He seems happy. The one who called me doesn't know what happy means.
Yeah, he looked really happy. Couldn't you also just tell from his voice? Did you really think that your old boss turned into an evil British villain?
Hello, Joseph.
Yeah, it sounded like it could be him, but once I saw how happy he was, I ruled that out. So now he decides he needs to look for a restaurant named Dragon something. Essentially, he's trying to track down where all of the dumplings came from. Why is your phone scrolling when you're not touching the screen? So he goes to a bunch of different restaurants to try the dumplings to see if he recognizes them from his captivity thing. Eventually, he tastes one that seems familiar. He hangs out at the restaurant and notices an unusually large order, and a big burly man in a suit with a cigar in his mouth comes by to pick them up. As he leaves, Joe Doucette goes through the back of the restaurant and grabs a hammer from an Asian lady who was just hammering a sign into concrete. He steals the delivery guy's bicycle and then chases after the vehicle, and within a short amount of time, he has successfully followed them to their destination, and he just sneaks right in unnoticed somehow. Now, as you probably already know, the first movie had a dumpling scene as well. He chases down the oblivious delivery driver a long distance, and when he gets there, he's horrendously out of breath. He follows him up the elevator, and that's how he gets inside. When Joe Doucette chases the vehicle, it doesn't feel like he's exerted himself in any way whatsoever. Good thing the building was only a couple blocks away, I guess. Joe Doucette uses his secret ninja skills to sneak around and take out both of the guys instantly. So now's probably a good point to get back to the original movie for a bit. By this point in the film, they've spent time developing the relationship of the main character and the female lead. It is often bizarre, and I can understand why they wouldn't want to replicate all of that for American audiences. But either way, something was actually developed here, whereas the chemistry between these two is non-existent. We get a scene where she's chatting online with a friend, and he reveals himself to be the bad guy. She claims she has no idea who this person is, and they just talk about sushi sometimes, but this causes him to to distrust her. Anyway, he makes it up to the secret location, and this starts off some of the most satisfying scenes ever put on film. So if for some reason you ignored my advice earlier and still haven't seen this movie yet, then you should probably just get on that right fucking now so you can experience it firsthand. Seriously, just watch it and come back, it's great. The first guy that he interacts with is one that he sneaks up on, and the presentation is just so enjoyable and creative. There is so much personality in this movie, and it really adds to the experience. Then we see this man who is taking a business call on the phone. Our main character breaks in, and we're treated to some excellent usage of classical music.
날 왜 감금했나 이 족방새야.
The reason he calls him a dickshit is because that's what he was called by the young guys that he beat up.
족방새. 처음 듣는다. 텔레비전은 욕을 안 가르쳐 주니까.
This movie is just filled with purposeful reincorporation, and every ounce of purpose that we see in this story is stripped away in the remake. Our main character then says he's going to avenge himself by extracting one tooth for each year he was imprisoned. The combination of music and emotion and practical effects make this scene just fantastic. After extracting his teeth, the main character ironically allows him to talk. He says he never saw the man's face who ordered for him to be imprisoned, but tells him he made recordings of their conversations. As he's leaving, there's a bunch of thugs waiting for him. He hands his hostage over so he can get medical attention, and then we see one of the coolest fight scenes ever. This fight lasts nearly 3 minutes, and it's all done in one shot. It's incredibly well choreographed and realistic. The set that they built to get this angle works very well. There are so many movies where a group of thugs are taking on one guy and you just have to wonder why they're all attacking him one at a time, but we were already shown the limited space of this hallway, so it makes sense because there's only 2 directions that they can really attack him from. What helps make this fight realistic is that there's an intentional clumsiness to it. Characters will often swing and miss their target, slip and stumble. Once he's defeated a decent amount of them, you see the fear being displayed in the remaining characters. It's just such an intelligent, well-crafted, and well-choreographed scene. And this is what you get when the people working on the film care about it. This is what you get when you have a great director at the helms of a project. The main character doesn't walk away like nothing scratched him. He forces himself to crawl backwards with a knife in his back. It is one of the most iconic fight scenes ever at this point, and for good reason. He leaves reflecting on how much of a vengeance-filled monster he's become, and he questions whether or not he'll ever be able to return to his old self. Eventually he falls over, injured and exhausted. A man helps him into a cab, and as he's about to leave, this happens.
그럼 잘 가라고 됐어.
Alright, that was all pretty great. Let's see what Oldboy 2013 did with this scene. First, he shows up and cancels Mr. Robot. There's nothing purposeful, creative, or interesting about this. It's just a dumb gore kill. He breaks into the office of Samuel L. Jackson, and then we get a reinterpretation of the torture scene. Remember that beautiful classical music that perfectly juxtaposed the visuals in the original? Nah, instead we're gonna have a score that does nothing but insist on how cool the scene is.
I've been thinking about it for the last 20 years.
Wait. Cock fucking. Oh! Oh, motherfucker! Oh!
Fuck, this is just so lame. Apparently it's really, really, really cool that Joe Doucette is slicing off a bunch of tiny chunks on this guy's throat. You know what I thought was cool, though? How the main character in the original tortured this man in a way where even if he wanted to talk and give answers, he couldn't, which really emphasizes how focused on revenge he is. Samuel L. Jackson could give him information at any point, but just decides not to. Having a big scar on your throat is a lot easier to live with than missing 15 teeth, so why not, I guess. At one point, Joe Doucette shoves a big ball of yarn in his mouth so he can't speak, but then he just removes it like 2 seconds later. What was the point of that? Was it one of those things where you thought, oh, the original movie did something like this, so let's do it too, but let's also forget to have any point to it this time? Also, maybe the ball of yarn should have been a bit smaller so you could actually shove it in his mouth. He's clearly biting onto it and could spit it out at any point in time. What the fuck is this? Oh no, Joe Doucette managed to get a hold of some table salt. You wouldn't want that in a fresh wound. That would really sting. Wow, what a cool way of torturing someone. This is so cool right now.
No.
One of the reasons why the torture scene in the original was just so incredibly effective is because we can all relate to the pain of having a tooth pulled. Most of us have experienced some sort of pain in our teeth, and it hurts. And as the film itself states, it's the anticipation of pain that causes this feeling. It's incredibly easy to imagine how painful this experience would be, whereas with the remake, there's really nothing to relate to here. I don't think many people watching this film have gotten little chunks of their throat cut out. The fact that we're unable to relate to any anticipation of pain here makes this so much less effective. Also, you're kind of just doing him a favor by killing the bacteria and disinfecting the wound for him. But it's really cool, guys, seriously.
Is it going to be, I mean, the original's incredibly extreme. Are they going to retain that? It's not going to be sort of toned down for all?
No, I think there's no point in redoing that movie if you're gonna do less than.
Yeah.
So Joe Doucette finds his tape and decides to play it right there. In the original film, he brings the tape to the female lead's home and listens to it later.
손님께서는 어느 정도 15년입니다. 안 되겠습니까? 무슨 죄를 지었길래 어디서는요? 말이 너무 많아요.
Now that doesn't really reveal all the information he's looking for, but it's some kind of a clue to keep the audience intrigued. But by the end of the tape listening in the remake, we learn literally nothing. And of course they're not going to show Sam Jackson reacting in any way to the ridiculous amount of time he's being asked to imprison Joe Doucette.
How long will we have the pleasure of entertaining this Mr. Doucette as a guest?
20 years.
Nah, that would contradict how badass and cool his character is.
Samuel Jackson's haircut, you know, he has the do the whole time, you know, whose idea was that?
Mine. Because I know that you cast Sam, one of the first things you're gonna say is how's his hair gonna look? So I said, Sam, you ever worn a mohawk? And he said, no. I said, let's go for that. He said, okay.
So eventually someone discovers the dead bodies and tries to get in the office. Maybe you should have listened to that tape somewhere else. He holds Sam Jackson hostage and then he makes his way towards the stairs.
Easy, Joe. Get him! Get his ass! Kill Marco?
Yeah, they killed Marco.
I'm sorry, what? Didn't they all chase you in the exact same direction you went? I get that these are a bunch of new guys, but where did the old guys go? Weren't they chasing you? It's just such a sloppy scene transition that obviously wasn't very well thought out at all. As soon as he gets here, it's abundantly clear that this is a completely different day of shooting. Obviously, that was never a thing in the original movie, and it was all pretty fucking seamless. But in this movie, it might as well just be a week later in a different building or something. My expectations for this fight scene were that they wouldn't even try to do it in one shot, but they actually did, so that's something, I guess. But it's still just so sloppy and embarrassing. Throughout the sequence, we get more shitty cool music and distractingly cheesy sound effects. It all feels fake as shit, and at no point do we ever feel the tight claustrophobia that we did with the space in the original. If this hallway wasn't wide enough already, he moves to an area that's even more spacious. I think you missed him, so I don't know where that sound came from. Maybe he swung so hard that the air hit him. As with the first movie, the fight dies down for some moments, but instead of seeing thugs that are astonished by the main character's fighting abilities, it just feels like we're watching a bunch of dopey-looking extras who have no idea what they're supposed to be doing.
맞을 때까지 기다려주고 이 정도 규모의 조폭이라면 미국은 총이 나와야 되는 거 아닌가요?
그렇죠. 그러니까 미국 정서에는 안 맞는 각색이지 않았을까?
비좁음이 되게 느껴져서 쾌감이 더 컸던 것 같아요. 근데 여기는 공간 자체가 넓다 보니까
이 원테이크 장면을 살리려고 했는데 너무 가벼운 액션씬이 돼버려서
좀 차별점을 두기 위해서 좀 더 감독이 좀 고민을 했던 흔적은 있는데 살 떨리는 긴장감이 없잖아요.
None of this feels real. Whenever Joe Doucette gets hit by one of them, it just feels like he's annoyed. And of course, by the end of the fight, he looks just fine. There was never any kind of struggle for this character to defeat all of these goons. He's a perfect superhero who's just really good at beating everybody up. As soon as the fight's over, we are treated to something both confusing and hilarious. What the fuck? I have to assume that the fight scene continued with him encountering more thugs, but it was just so sloppy and embarrassing that they cut it out. This is not the same place where you just were. Perhaps they did show a bit of a struggle with these last guys that we'll never get to see. As it's presented, it feels as though he'd be just fine if it weren't for that surprise knife attack punchline. After doing some more research, I discovered that this film actually was cut down quite a bit, and as expected, there is an extended fight scene on the Blu-ray that shows the missing footage. There was almost a minute and a half cut from this scene altogether, and there are some moments in this cut footage that show the character going through a bit more of a struggle, but not only does it still portray him as more or less of an invincible superhero, but it's still all cheesy as shit. Apparently there's people out there that think that Spike Lee's extended director's cut would have saved the movie. I guess we'll never really know, considering the original cut of the film was 3 hours long, but personally it just feels like it would be adding bullshit to bullshit. I don't really see how experiencing more bad is supposed to save this movie. Going through the rest of the deleted scenes, I found something else that was kind of interesting. Apparently they completely reshot the scene where Sam Jackson is receiving the call from the bad guy. Maybe they thought his hair looked a little too ridiculous. Oddly enough, in this version, he actually does react to the whole 20 years thing.
How long will we have the pleasure of entertaining Mr. Doucette as our guest?
20 years.
I'm sorry. I'm not sure I heard you correctly.
You did.
So I guess in some aspects there was a potentially kind of better film before they cut it down. Still, this movie is pretty fucking broken at its core, which I'm sure you can tell by this point in the video anyway. The problems with this movie definitely do not end at editing choices and missing information, although it is interesting to think about what a director's cut of this film would actually be like. Anyway, Joe Doucette makes his way down the stairs with a knife in his back, and we are treated to yet another unintentionally hilarious scene transition. Now, the first film actually did something pretty similar to this, and although it is a little bit cheesy and comical, it's nowhere near as embarrassing. I mean, first of all, the guys were already in the elevator before the cut. Where the fuck was the elevator here, and how far away was it? It's kind of ridiculous. As he goes outside, he stumbles over immediately, and the villain makes himself incredibly obvious from the moment he speaks.
Oh my god. You must take care of yourself. The fun is only just beginning.
He drops him off at his friend's bar, and that's the end of the scene. Now that was great filmmaking. So at this point in the original film, he listens to the tapes, and then he heads to his friend's internet cafe, and they meet for the first time in 15 years. What's interesting about their relationship is that they're presented in a yin and yang kind of way. The main character used to be a fat slob at the beginning of the film, and now it seems as though his friend has turned into one. Either way, the 15 years worth of change is much more noticeable and present in this film. He plays the tape for his friend and asks if he recognizes the voice. With no leads, they search through the messaging application that was used earlier in the film to find the person that Mito was talking to, and immediately the villain just starts fucking with him with more cryptic riddles.
노루가 사냥꾼 손에서 벗어나는 것 같이 새가 그물 치는 자의 손에서 벗어나는 것 같이 스스로 구원하라. 따옴표 닫고.
He then returns to Mito's home and ties her up.
갇혀 있는 동안 결심했다. 나가면 누구도 믿지 않겠다고. 누구든지 의심 가는 사람이 생기면 그 사람하고 나만 아는 비밀을 만들어두겠다고. 대화명 몬스터는 널 잡기 위해 만든 함정이야. 처음 본 남자를 집에 끌어들이는 넌 도대체 누구야?
Once again, we are shown the incredible emotional toll that captivity has placed on him. At this point, he doesn't trust anyone, and he believes he's found good reason to distrust Mito. He starts questioning her, and he gets a phone call from his friend saying that he tracked down the information of the user that he was talking to. He shows up at the address, and the villain is waiting for him. The villain then tells him if he can figure out who he is and why he imprisoned him within 5 days, then he'll kill himself instead of Mito. The main character then prepares to torture information out of him, but the villain reveals that he has a weak heart with a pacemaker that he paid the doctors very well to install with a remote control to be able to shut off the motor at any time. Basically, he has a button that he can push to kill himself at any moment.
이거 어떡하나. 성질 같으면 확 죽여버리고 싶은데 그러자니 가둔 이유를 모르겠고 고문을 하자니 지가 먼저 죽어버린다고 그러지. 자, 복수를 하느냐, 이유를 알아내느냐.
It is a fascinating dilemma to include in the film, and it's easy to see why this character is now struggling with this. The villain then says that seeking revenge is the best cure for someone who has been hurt and that he should try it.
복수가 다 이루어지고 나면 어떨까? 아마 숨어있던 고통이 다시 찾아올걸?
As the villain leaves, he tells the main character that he left the door open to Mito's place. He rushes back there and finds a bunch of goons waiting for him, and the man whose teeth he removed earlier is eager to get revenge. I really love that they reincorporate the same classical music that was used in the original scene. It really helps make the experience very intense and fun to watch. Before he's able to pull any teeth, he gets a phone call from the villain. They open the door and are presented with a suitcase full of money, and it's implied that the villain is paying them to leave the main character alone. Before he leaves, he hits the main character with a bat, and as he's leaving, the main character insists that they fight.
네 손목 잘라야겠어. 미토 유방만
Not only does this show that he obviously cares for her, but knowing that the villain set out to hurt her is making him start to trust her again.
아직도 나 열심히 해, 이 나쁜 놈아!
At this point, Mito quits her job and they leave in a rental car. Despite their very bizarre issues, these characters are now falling in love, and eventually we see them making passionate love to each other. As they're sleeping, we see gas start to seep in from under the door, and when they wake up, they discover that someone has placed a mysterious box in the room. Inside the box is a severed hand with the same ring that we saw in this character, and at this point they figure that they must be bugged with some sort of listening device, because the villain clearly knew that he threatened to chop off that guy's hand. They go to a local business to get the bug removed, and then back at the internet cafe they start doing more searches for the villain's username, and this leads them to the website for the evergreen Old Boys, which is associated with a school that the main character once attended. Alright, let's get back to the remake and see how they handled all this information. So Joe Doucette gets some medical attention from the nurse and the guy that we saw working with her at the mobile clinic. Later, the bar's about to close and he gets a call on his cell phone. I guess this really is the villain's phone number. He decides to call the number back this time, and uh-oh, it's coming from inside the bar!
There he is!
Apparently every single patron in there was one of his goons the whole time. So yeah, basically they just decided to skip over the whole character experiencing trust issues because of his captivity thing. The villain presents the same challenge of finding out who he is and why he did this, except this time the reward includes $20 million worth of diamonds for some reason, and if he fails he's gonna kill his daughter. Oh no, not my daughter. She's my entire motivation as a character. Also, there's no real dilemma between truth and revenge anymore. The only reason he's not trying to kill the guy is because someone else will shoot him. Man, that is so much more interesting. They then show him a live broadcast of Marie being abused. That's some pretty perfect video quality for a 2013 iPad live stream. He takes a taxi over to her residence, but oh no, they're waiting for him. When Sam Jackson gets the phone call from the boss, he basically just decides to repeat everything he's saying out loud.
Well, indeed it was you who gave me this address, and I appreciate that, but no, there's nothing you can give me that will stop me. Go to the door.
And yeah, pretty much the same thing happens minus any real tension or emotion. The main character never tries to fight them or anything. There's no threat to cut off his hand. Overall, it's a pretty soulless reinterpretation. As they're leaving, he gets another phone call from the villain, who I guess just immediately decides to hang up.
Every time he calls, the same music plays.
Yeah, that's how ringtones work. Did you expect a different song to play every time he called? At this point, Marie decides to Shazam the ringtone, and they find out that the song is from Evergreen Academy. So yeah, this is the whole reason why he mentioned the ringtone. I fail to understand why they didn't do what the original film did and have the song play every time the gas was released. At least then it would be something worth him pointing out. Like, hey, every time he calls, it plays the same song from when I was in captivity. Not, duh, every time he calls, it's the same song plays. Isn't that weird? So now this film tries to show them falling in love, and it's just so fucking awkward. There is zero fucking chemistry between these characters, and it's really awful to watch.
I'm glad you're here.
So they track down the headmistress of the academy and get Mia to ask her some questions. Meanwhile, Joe Doucette sneaks around like a ninja in the background. We don't really learn anything at all from the headmistress, but Joe Doucette finds an old yearbook and is like, oh, that face looks familiar, I guess. Overall, this is a really boring and pointless scene, with the only entertaining aspect being this woman's acting.
You said you believe Joe is innocent. Why don't you tell me who you are?
Anyway, they find a motel and send the picture to Chucky to see if he recognizes him. He apparently has no idea and then says, let me see what I can find out and I'll call you back. And then we get a really awkward sex scene with two characters that apparently like each other. Also, apparently the villain had installed a high-quality camera right above their bed at some point without them noticing. Pretty great live streaming quality for 2013. Alright, I guess we've caught up to the original movie, so let's get back to that for a bit. So they go to the Evergreen Old Boys Academy and convince the janitor to let them look at the yearbook for the class of '79. He finds the photo of Lee Woo-jin and calls his friend to ask some questions. He notices that Lee Woo-jin's sister was in the same year as them and also died. His friend explains that she went to the dam and fell into the water, and that this all happened after the main character had left the school. He asks his friend what she was like, and he responds by saying she was a total slut. As he goes on to describe all of these rumors about her in detail, we see that Lee Woo-jin is actually right there listening in. Clearly this conversation has an emotional effect on him, so he pops a CD out of the drive and breaks it. He then walks over and starts stabbing him to death with the broken CD.
당신이 도청장치를 다 없애버려가지고 여기까지 왔잖아요. 응? 엿들으려고요. 그러니까 노주환 씨는 당신 때문에 죽은 거예요. Okay?
We hear the main character yelling over the phone, and as he's driving back, we see that he is in a fit of rage. We see the villain in his penthouse, and there is clearly an emotional toll taken on him as well. The main character then visits the dentist's office that he was recommended to by this guy before he was about to destroy his teeth, and from that he's able to get the man's phone number.
아, 왜 이래? 돈은 필요 없어. 저게 지금 친구잖아.
손은 썩어서 그냥 버렸어요.
정이 엄마. 이 나쁜 놈의 새끼들.
At this point in the film, we learn that the main character arranged this to imprison Mito there. Whether justified or not, he believes he's doing this for her own safety and tells them to release her if he's not back after July 5th. In his mind, this is a place that is guarded where she can't be hurt, and since he's a fugitive and can't turn to the authorities, he believes that this is his best option. Later, the main character learns that he had more to do with those rumors than he had initially thought.
진심도 추아이한테 들었다 카는데 네가 제일 잘 알기라 한다 야가.
We are then treated to a flashback sequence where the main character starts to remember the events that took place. This entire sequence is shown with a changed color palette, and we essentially see the current version of our main character following around the younger version of himself. The way this sequence was shot, they were never shown in the frame at the same time. It's a clever and effective way of showing him retrace his steps. Eventually, he remembers looking through a broken window at the school. Inside an empty classroom, Lee Woo-jin is playing with his sister. Over the course of the scene, it turns into something sexual, and once they notice him watching, he leaves. As he's packing to leave for Seoul, he mentions what he saw to his friend.
네 얘기하면 죽는데.
And apparently he blabbed to the whole school. Now at this point, there's still more to reveal within the story, but the main characters feel as though they have the truth. Mito suggests they run away where they can never be found, but our main character is not yet satisfied.
못 끝날 것 같아. 이제 복수심이 아예 내 성격이 돼버렸어.
Alright, that was all pretty great. Let's see what Oldboy 2013 did. At this point, Chucky uses the information received from Joe Doucette to do a Google search, because apparently the main characters didn't realize they could do that on their phones. He tries calling them, but they're busy fucking, I guess, so he leaves a message. And at this point, we realize that the villain is listening in.
Call me as soon as you get this. It's not about him, it's about her, the whore. Remember?
So the villain decides to pay Chucky a visit, and whoo boy is this ever comical.
You called her a whore.
You called her a whore!
You know, and Charlton went for it, and, you know, he did something very extreme, which I think was amazing. You know, it's walking the razor's edge.
Now it's nighttime, and the main characters are breaking into the school to find some info. They find the info on the villain's sister, and then we get an incredibly embarrassing recreation of that flashback sequence. In this version, we see young Joe Doucette being an asshole and stealing some girl's panties.
Hey, Joe, leave her alone. If she wants to go, let her go.
Donna, shut up. This is sexy. Very sexy. Huh, Chucky? Oh, what a fucking freak. You douchebag.
Ew, this girl wears perfectly normal panties. What a fucking freak, am I right? Now, once again, this film completely misses the point of how the original was presented. Rather than showing the main character retracing the steps of his younger self to try and remember what happened, instead these two are kinda just awkwardly hanging out in a scene where they don't belong. Both versions of the main character show up in frame at the same time. The old version leaves the room and the young version just stays there. It just feels really awkward and distracting. Once again, this film doesn't understand what made the original work. It just sloppily recreates the gist of it in the hopes that it does. What is even happening here in the present anyway? Does Marie see all of this shit happening too, or is she just really bored? Anyway, the young Joe Doucette goes to his stash by the greenhouse and hears a noise worth investigating. You'd think that if they were openly drinking alcohol inside the school that he wouldn't have to stash any outside, but whatever, I guess. Oh no, those two people are fucking, and now I can see both of their faces. Hi. So that is what the main character saw, and apparently Marie has just been staring at nothing this whole time. They then go look through a microfiche slide and discover that there was a double murder-suicide.
That's him, the man in the greenhouse that night. He was her father.
So you're a professor at the school who decided to fuck your daughter. Why did it need to be at the school? Why didn't you find a room with a locking door? Or perhaps a room that's not made out of fucking windows? In the original film, it's pretty fucking harsh that he got locked up 15 years for talking about an intimate moment that he intruded on. But in this film, I don't see any justification whatsoever. Why would you be fucking your daughter on the school property outside in a greenhouse unless you wanted people to see it? Were you thinking you had some kind of expectation of privacy or something? This is your fault. Oh no, somebody found out about our relationship. How could this have happened? Anyway, they leave the building and he calls Chucky, but there's no answer, and there's a mysterious box right there, so he opens it and oh no, I'd know that tongue anywhere. Remember the mental breakdown that the main character in the original film experienced when he lost his best friend? Well, apparently Joe Doucette doesn't give a shit. All he does is shake his head a little and try to calm down Marie. If this is how the main character is reacting to this, I'm not really sure how we're supposed to feel as though Chucky's death mattered at all. Whatever, I'll find a new bartender.
이렇게 뒤로 이렇게 제껴서 그냥 흘러가는 거를 멍하게 보고 있는 그런 영화는 별로 나는 무슨 재미를 보는지 모르겠어요. 그렇게 편안한 휴식이 필요하면 찜질방을 가지 왜 극장을 가나 나는 알 수가 없어요. 어쨌든.
Back at the motel, Marie tries to convince him not to go pursue the main villain guy.
If he kills you, you're not going to see your daughter. Okay, and if you kill him, you're still not going to see your daughter. Just don't go.
I don't have a choice.
Yep, that's it. Nothing about how vengeance has become a part of him or anything. He just feels like it. Gotta love romance between two people who clearly don't love each other. Hey, do you remember that this guy has a daughter? Look at her, there she is. Anyway, the villain changes the screen so that he gets coordinates to where he is right now. And now would be a great time to get back to the original film. The main character finds out where the villain's penthouse is located. He spends a bunch of time trying to figure out the code to get access to the floor, but then the villain and his sidekick just show up in the elevator and do it for him. When they get upstairs, two men try to apprehend him, but he stabs them to death using a broken toothbrush. Our main character, now believing that he knows why he was imprisoned, says that it was because he started the rumors that Lee Woo-jin slept with his sister. Woo-jin then adds to this, saying that the rumors got so out of hand that people started saying she was pregnant. Her period stopped and her belly began to swell, and Lee Woo-jin believes that this was a phantom pregnancy brought on by the lies that she believed. Now, the film never reveals reveals whether or not it was actually a phantom pregnancy, but this is what Woo Jin has convinced himself of. I personally feel as though this is just his way of trying to shift the blame onto the main character, as Woo Jin does not want to admit to himself that he could be in any way responsible for his sister's death. Our main character then accuses him of killing his sister at the dam, but then Woo Jin starts laughing. Woo Jin then reveals that our main character and Mido were both hypnotized to fall in love with each other, and that they were both particularly receptive to hypnosis. Our main character is then directed towards a box on the table where we get to the big reveal of the film. And yep, holy crap, it turns out that Mido was actually his daughter the whole time. What a fucked up way to get revenge. Our main character furiously lunges towards Woo Jin with a pair of scissors, but his bodyguard stops him, and after an emotional struggle, he manages to stab him through the ear. At this point, the bodyguard loses composure and attempts to kill him, but Lee Woo Jin steps in and shoots the bodyguard in the head. At this point, our main character is desperate to make sure that Mido never finds out about this, but Woo Jin reveals that Mr. Park is still on good terms with him.
당신은 이게 뭐야? 박철웅 씨 손은요? 이 비응신아. 그 강금방 있죠? 이사 가야 된다고 그래서 그 건물 주고 산 거란 말이야. 내가!
He calls Mr. Park's phone and talks to Mido, who says that he's telling her to open a box in front of her.
이거 그때처럼 보라색인데.
안 돼! 미도야, 안 돼! 절대 열지 마! 그 열면 큰일 난다! 손도 대지 마, 알았지?
This fucking scene has one of the most powerful and emotional performances ever, and I can't show the whole thing here, so you seriously just have to watch it for yourself. At this point, our main character is so broken and desperate, and he'll do anything to protect her from knowing the pain of what happened. He goes through several stages of emotional processing. He threatens to kill Woo Jin if she ever finds out. He starts begging and apologizing and asking him to forget what he just said, and throughout this whole emotional breakdown, Woo Jin is just trying to hold back his laughter. It is so fucked up and so powerful. And if you haven't noticed, the scars on the main character's knuckles have stayed consistent the entire film. There is so much passion and detail put into this project, and it shows in every way. Eventually, he grabs a pair of scissors and attempts to prove how far he'll go to protect Mido from this information. And after cutting out his tongue, Woo Jin calls Mr. Park and tells him to leave the box closed. Woo Jin then aims his gun at both of their heads, and at this point, the main character is ready to die. But rather than pulling the trigger, he stands up and gives him the remote that was previously explained to stop his pacemaker. Woo Jin heads for the elevator, and our main character presses the button, but it turns out that it is not actually connected to his heart, and it instead plays audio from his sound system that was recorded of him and Mido having sex.
누나하고 난 다 알면서도 사랑했어요. 너희도 그럴 수 있을까?
Fucking brutal. On the elevator, Woo Jin experiences an emotional flashback of his sister's death, and now that he has nothing left to live for, he commits suicide. We then see that the main character has written a letter to the girl who had performed hypnosis on him earlier, and we also see some nice reincorporation of one of the earlier lines in the film. Through this, he becomes hypnotized to forget about his secret, and Mido finds him and tries to help warm him up. Mido says she loves him, and the film ends with a shot of our main character's face. We'll never know if he was ever able to truly forget his secret. And although in some ways this is a happy ending, it is also so incredibly bleak. It's kind of sad and fucked up and bittersweet. It's a great ending to a very powerful film, and I love it so much. This whole ending sequence altogether was just phenomenal. The impressive sets, the fucked up plot, the mind-blowing performance. There's a reason why this is considered one of the best movies ever. But enough of that, let's go back to Oldboy 2013 and see just how it compares. The main character finds his way to the villain's penthouse, but not without some terrible music and editing choices. He immediately starts fighting with this film's version of the bodyguard, and it's over in like 2 seconds. Cool. The villain then turns on a live feed of his daughter and then opens up the briefcase full of diamonds that he was promised. Joe Doucette then explains why he believes he was imprisoned.
I saw your sister with a man down at the greenhouse.
They were fucking.
They were fucking. Perhaps they should have been fucking somewhere with a bit of privacy. It's your fault that you noticed these two people fucking outside. I'm sorry, this is no one's fault but your dad's. This is just so stupid. Then we get a really comical shot of the bullying that Amanda experienced in school.
Amanda's a whore! 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 Whore!
Leave me alone!
Chucky, calm it down!
The villain then explains that his father was a great man and he only knew love and what we had together was pure. And then we are treated to the funniest scene in the entire movie. So once again, we're shown a flashback with our present-day characters just awkwardly standing there for no reason. The father enters the room and immediately the daughter's response is to start undressing. Like, that's the cue. As soon as I enter the room, we fuck. Those are the rules. Oh no, he didn't come here to fuck. He came here to fuck shit up. He walks over to the stairs where he sees his wife and bam, she's dead too now. The shot continues as it follows him down the stairs and he reloads his weapon. And throughout this shot, it just feels as though the movie's continuing to insist on how cool it is. The slow pacing and the music is supposed to imply that there's some sort of tension here, but does anybody really give a shit? Nobody cares about any of these characters. It's just all really pointless. Eventually, he walks in a room to find the younger version of our main villain.
Father?
Father, hilarious. And it's even funnier when you actually start to think about it. Like, okay, he didn't wake up from the 2 shotgun blasts, but he woke up from his father just calmly walking into the room. And just like your sister, your first response is to start stripping. Oh, great, my father's here. I'm gonna get my dick sucked. Does it not concern you that he's very clearly walking up to you with a shotgun? Perhaps he's done this before and he thought it was just the same old role play they've been doing. Oh, great, my daddy's here with a shotgun again. Time to strip. Father. How on earth can you film this and not realize how fucking stupid it looks? The blueprints to a great film were right there, but you insisted on instead going for this clearly inferior reinterpretation. The original Old Boy's got him locked up for 15 years? Well, fuck that. We're gonna make him locked up for 20 years. The original Old Boy's got a brother and sister that are involved in an incestuous relationship? Well, fuck that. This is a whole family of incest. We're raising the fucking bar. Isn't that cool? Ow, father. My daddy was a good man. Sure, he killed my entire family, but this is your fault. Fuck off. So now they casually walk to this other room for some reason for the big reveal.
Mind your head.
I guess the penthouse set was pretty pathetic compared to the original film anyway, so whatever. Oh yeah, it's so he can show him the set for the show Mysteries of Crime. Apparently, it was a fake show that the villain had created just for the main character. And despite him having the ability to change channels, he just knew that he would really love the show. And remember, there was no hypnotism in this movie, so it's just random chance, I guess. They walk over here and oh shit, it's Mia playing the cello. Psych, it's not actually Mia though.
That is not your daughter. Ashley is a musician and very well-paid actress that I've had in my employ since she was 10 years old.
Grr, I'm so mad, I'm gonna punch you.
You tell me where she is, you tell me!
Answer the question you never asked. Why did I let you go?
So he presses the button on a remote and we get a nice little projection that shows that, oh no, he fucked his daughter. But there's no hypnotism in this film. So it just happened to work out that they fell in love? He easily could have left without getting her info that day. She wasn't programmed to do this for him. These characters never even would have met after their first encounter if Chucky didn't call her. What a wild fucking coincidence. It's just all very convenient, I guess. And this villain's entire 20-year plan was based around this?
It took 20 years to create her. A sensitive, caring woman, eager to help those in need because she herself had overcome such a troubled past.
Yes, we raised her to be a sympathetic person, so obviously that means that she would fall in love and have sex with you. Okay.
The kind of woman who couldn't help but fall in love with a man like you, Joseph Doucet.
Oh my god, this is embarrassing.
Oh, no. You can't hurt her.
Who is this?
Leave her out of it, please. Please.
Who is this?
Remember how brutal and emotionally powerful Choi Min-shik's performance was? Well, fuck that, because Josh Brolin's here to set the bar even higher.
Please, 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 please. No, don't hurt her. Hurt me. Hurt me.
It's emotionally dangerous. And then sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. You know, you're hoping that when they get in the editing room, they have enough. I've put enough garbage out there for them to try and cut together something that's tangible.
Kill me. Yes, 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 yes. Kill me, please.
This is why I let you go, so that you could truly understand what I had and what you took from me.
So what you're basically saying is that incest is wincest. I mean, you already made him experience the loss of his loved one by killing his wife, right? Or maybe you could have waited until he remarried and then killed her or something, but apparently that doesn't count and he would have no idea what it's like. I needed you to experience sexual intimacy with a family member so you could see how cool it is. Father!
Heaven make me free of it. The rest is silence.
Nice. Well, that all happened very quickly. Seriously, all it took for him to not tell Marie was for Joe Doucette to just beg for 20 seconds. Yeah, that's good enough. It's basically what I wanted. You don't need to cut off your tongue or anything. That's fine. Don't worry about it. Perhaps the director's cut would have showed more, but I somehow still doubt that it would have compared to the original in any way. I'm trying to imagine exactly what could have been shown for me to give a shit about this villain. Lee Woo-jin was a crazy fucked up asshole, but the film kind of makes you feel sorry for him. He may be in denial over his own responsibility for his sister's death, but you can clearly understand how he'd be able to shift the blame onto the main character. But what do we get in this movie? Fucking bullshit. The motivations are terrible, the deaths aren't emotional at all. At no point do I feel as though this guy was seriously emotionally affected by all of this. No fucking wonder they didn't show a flashback before this guy killed himself, cause what would you even show? Father. It's all just really stupid. Anyway, the film ends with Joe reading a letter that he sends to Mia or Marie or whatever. The music is trying very hard to make it emotionally impactful.
I'm gone from your life forever. I have done something terrible. Something unforgivable.
Oh hey, it's this stupid thing. That means something.
Maria, I will love you. Always. But you must forget me.
Are they trying to imply that this stupid, dumb toy that he bought for $5 when he was shit-faced after his ex-wife yelled at him is supposed to hold any sort of sentimental value? She never even saw it. I don't care how much she loves him, the appropriate response should be, what the fuck is this shit? It doesn't mean anything, and this film's insistence that it's significant is just embarrassing. Anyway, he sends Mia some diamonds and uses the rest of them to check himself back into the place where he was held captive.
Goodbye, Joe.
And apparently he even held on to that blood docky. This is the only love I'll ever need in my life. And yeah, that's the end of the movie. You couldn't just use some of the diamonds to move away somewhere? You're not gonna try and start a new life? Don't you think you might regret this decision in a couple days? I mean, obviously there was the concept of self-sacrifice in the original film, but this is just so forced. It doesn't make sense. Why is he getting dumplings again if he hates them so much? You'd think his bag of diamonds would be enough to request some better meal options or something. Nah, I just want to torture myself for eternity because I'm such a good guy. This is like the ending of I Am Legend. Yeah, sure, I don't really need to do this, but maybe the audience will think I'm more noble if I do. All right, have fun in there, I guess. Hey, wait a minute. The end.
What did you think of the American remake?
실망시켜드려서 죄송합니다만 사실 제가 못 봤습니다.
Now, we'll never really know if Spike Lee actually tried to make a great movie here. After all, his attitude in the interviews he gave is likely because of how much was cut from the film. But not only was this film broken at its core with a pointless and terrible script in the first place, but there's a much bigger problem here. By making this film, you are essentially telling American audiences that they don't need to expand their horizons. There is a world of foreign language cinema out there that is waiting for people to discover it, and part of the reason why the original Oldboy is so important is that it acts as a gateway for South Korean cinema. This film is so well made and accessible to mainstream audiences that it proves that there's something more out there. You can show this film to someone who's not interested in foreign language films and they'll probably love it, and some of those people will become more interested in discovering films that aren't in the English language. Now, I'm not saying that a film's language makes it better or worse. What I'm saying is that there are foreign language films out there that American audiences would love, but they don't get enough attention. And you are doing a huge disservice to this by making a shitty American remake of one of the best and most accessible foreign language films ever.
It's a brilliant film. It's a brilliant story, and one that, you know, a lot of English speakers will not see because a lot of people don't see foreign films.
This movie is a crime against the art of filmmaking itself, and hopefully this review has introduced the original film to some new audience members. If you loved Oldboy, then please check out Park Chan-wook's other films. His most recent film, The Handmaiden, was my favorite film of 2016, and you should probably check out some films from Joon-ho Bong while you're at it too. Anyway, hopefully I've proved to you just how fucking incompetent this remake was, and hopefully people who make remakes in the future will actually put some thought into what made the original film effective. There's no point showing a scene from the original movie if you're not going to show the point of the scene from the original movie. Anyway, this movie was garbage. 1 out of 10. It sucks. Fuck it. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.